Hey guys, it's Emma Vigling with TYT Politics. I am here in DC with my friend Nash Jenkins. He is a congressional reporter for Time and a muckraker and shoe leather dude and all of that good stuff, right?
I like to think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're here to talk about the government shutdown because, frankly, it is a story that's constantly updating. I'm going to try and get this up as soon as possible, but as of noon today, Mitch McConnell is going to take to the Senate floor and attempt to, I don't know, salvage this, maybe turn it all around, because I guess starting today on Monday, that's when the real implications of the government shutdown affect workers, affect payroll, etc. What's the likelihood of anything passing or Mitch McConnell being successful in about, an hour and a half?
I think the likelihood is pretty bleak, frankly. A little more likely than it was, 14, 16 hours ago. McConnell pushed the vote from 1 a.m. last night to noon, hoping that would buy them more time to get somewhere in these bipartisan negotiations. But the Democrats aren't budging.
That's a first, by the way.
Yeah, no, totally. It's the first time in this Congress that the Democrats have decided to use what muscle they have. Republicans control both houses and the White House, and the Democrats have sort of been, railroaded on everything. Tax reform, they had no insight. They sort of just had to stand by with their hands in their pockets while the Republicans tried, unsuccessfully, I'll add, to repeal Obamacare. And now they're finally saying enough is enough. So just for background, the government shut down because of immigration. But for context, the fiscal year began in October, and instead of passing a budget for the year, Congress has passed a series of shorter-term continuing resolutions which keep the government funded for short periods of time, generally seen as bad policymaking, bad governance.
Well, let me just interrupt you because
you
tried to ask Paul Ryan about this, and the Daily Caller said you were annihilated like Trump has annihilated ISIS.
Yeah, they weren't really nice to me over at the Daily Caller.
So that's a good thing.
I was at a press conference with Paul Ryan last week, and I said, Speaker Ryan, why is it that we're for the fourth time in as many months, trying to fund the government on a temporary basis, which I think is a valid question. And he suggested that it wasn't worthwhile and that he'd already answered it, which, fine, whatever.
Sorry to throw you off.
No, you're good. But basically, yeah, it's bad governance, and the Democrats have gone along with it because they've been promised to no avail that in these, these windows of negotiation, they're going to get a compromise on DACA. And they haven't. And that's why they coalesced to essentially shut the government down. It is the Schumer shutdown, as Trump and his ilk have dubbed it.
But so when we're talking about immigration, so DACA, a clean DACA bill has a 70% approval rating in the country. And then we talked about tax reform. The bill that they rammed through past the feckless Democrats was, 27% approval rating. So the idea that they're caving, or they caved really, or they couldn't really do much on tax reform, or could potentially cave, I don't think they're going to, on DACA, would be caving to policy proposals by the Republicans that have absolutely no popularity in the country, which is their leverage.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, not only is DACA hugely popular with the American voters, the Dreamers are an impressively organized political force. I'm on Capitol Hill 4 days a week, and at least 3 of those days over the last 2 months, I've seen Dreamers occupying Senate office buildings, basically saying enough is enough. It's been October, November, December, January, 4 months since Trump repealed DACA, and there's been no legislative solution. And finally, the Democrats said, you know what? You haven't given this to us, Republicans. We're going to put our feet in the ground and stand firm until you do. The problem is the House. You have a lot of moderate Republicans in the Senate, Jeff Flake of Arizona, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, who have been pushing for a bipartisan, relatively liberal immigration solution. But in the House, you have this faction of conservative hardliners. I'm talking about Mark Meadows, who chairs the Freedom Caucus, who led the effort to unseat John Boehner as Speaker in 2015, and has flirted with the idea of doing the same with Paul Ryan. He's basically said, we're not going to accept any immigration bill that doesn't include extreme internal security measures, total end to chain migration, total end to the diversity visa lottery, and that's just never going to fly in the Senate. So in the House, you have these guys who want a hardline proposal that's never going to fly in the Senate. In the Senate, you have moderates who want a bipartisan proposal that's never going to fly in the House. And as a result, we're in a stalemate. And back to your original question, there is a vote on the CR at noon today. But Democrats have said, we're not going to vote for it unless we have a serious commitment from McConnell to bring a DACA vote to the floor soon, and that hasn't happened.
Right, and so there were 5 Democrats who voted for the initial spending bill in that first vote.
Yeah.
So even it has to pass a 60-vote threshold, and the vote was I'm blanking on it, 50 to.
Yeah, 50 to 49, John McCain was out.
Yes, John McCain's out. I just wanted to make sure that was right. And the 5 Democrats who voted for the spending bill were Joe Donnelly, Heidi Heitkamp, Doug Jones, #Resistance, Joe Manchin, and Claire McCaskill. So obviously Joe Manchin, I would say by most estimations, is the most conservative Democrat in the Senate. Heidi Heitkamp's up there as well, too. Joe Donnelly, they're all in red states, Claire McCaskill as well. But it is surprising that that Chuck Schumer couldn't keep his caucus together essentially on DACA, on including a clean DACA bill, which is, as I mentioned earlier, an extremely popular proposal. What is the reasoning behind those 5 Democrats and their vote?
Well, if you ask them, they would say they voted for the CR on Friday, in other words, against a shutdown, and as some would say, against DACA, because the CR included funding for CHIP, that's the Children's Health Insurance Program, funding and authorization for which lapsed in September. And these are senators representing relatively poor states where you have a lot of beneficiaries of CHIP, and they're saying they're doing what their constituents want. The more cynical and I think pragmatic way to look at it, it's an election year. And all of them, except for Jones, who beat Roy Moore in the special in Alabama a couple of months back, are up. And like you said, these are red states that went for Trump, and they're worried. Claire McCaskill is a far cry from a moderate Democrat.
But she's also often pushed forth as, Democratic leadership. She's a strong voice in the Democratic Party. It is surprising. I don't think her seat is necessarily in jeopardy when it comes up for re-election.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously she has the incumbent's advantage. I do know that there are a lot of post-Tea Party Bannonite characters rallying in Missouri to take her down, with varying degrees of credibility. But I think she's just playing it safe. Likewise with Joe Manchin, and I do know that there's worry on Capitol Hill that Joe Manchin is quietly whipping votes among the other Democrats for the CR.
Jeez, man.
No, I mean, do I think it's going to be successful? Not at all. Because just as these 5 are thinking, or 4, I should say, are thinking about 2018, the rest of the Dems are thinking about not only 2018 but 2020. So you have folks like Cory Booker, who... You
think he's thinking about 2020?
You sound surprised, Emma.
No, I'm being a little bit sarcastic, but just a little bit.
So as we know, Senator Booker of New Jersey his name has been floated repeatedly as a potential 2020 contender, and what we've seen in the Democratic Party in the wake of Clinton's loss in 2016 is this sort of scramble to the left, and that's come at the behest of Sanders, with Sanders at least as the figurehead. They've realized centrism is not the path forward for the Democratic Party, which is a huge shift. Because think about it. I mean, that's been the platform of the Dems since, pretty much since Clinton, since the early 90s.
And it's funny how it began really with Clinton and ended with a Clinton.
That's a very poetic way of looking
I
at it.
like to be poetic.
So, we saw this in the fall with Medicare for All, right? Sanders had repeatedly, proposed single-payer legislation in the Senate. 2 years ago, he did so. He couldn't get a single Democratic senator to sign on to the bill with him. This time around...
Conyers in the House, too.
Yeah, exactly. This time around, a quarter of all Senate Democrats jumped on the Medicare for All proposal, which indicates to me a sign that they are trying to pivot leftward. And you're seeing the same thing with DACA. They're coming out and saying we are going to stick to our principles, and stand by them.
But also, like, the framing of that is interesting. So, like, leftward in D.C. is different than leftward in the country. So, like, Medicare for All, single payer is hugely popular. DACA, clean DACA bill is hugely popular.
Yes.
But inching towards that is moving left. So, I mean, we know that discrepancy, and we've discussed it as well. But I just think it's an interesting point. And I don't want to focus all the time on the Democrats because it's fun and I think it's an interesting angle. But
it is fun.
Yeah, but it's fun to talk about Clinton all the time. I fall into that trap. But the votes, the Republicans who voted no on the spending bill initially, I think that's interesting as well. So
sure.
Flake, obviously, hashtag resistance, Lindsey Graham, Mike Lee, McConnell, and Paul. So McConnell, was that procedural?
Yeah, that was a procedural thing.
Right, but so then you have Lee and Paul, who are, the libertarian kind of voices in the Senate, and then Flake and Graham are seen. I don't know why Lindsey Graham voted against this. I'm curious because even though he's seen as a voice against Trump, he votes with Trump consistently.
Sure. Well, Lindsey Graham, it's funny. Lindsey Graham, there are some more conservative Republicans who are quietly fuming that Lindsey Graham should just go ahead and register as a Democrat. Because, even though he's voted with Trump, he has been a moderate voice of reason on immigration. He's been a longtime backer of the DREAM Act, which, as you know, was first introduced 17 years ago by Durbin and Orrin Hatch and has simply never seen the light of day. And these days, he and Flake have coalesced to sort of say, okay, this is what we need, a moderate, practical solution to Trump's repeal of DACA. And that's what Graham's vote was about. As you've probably seen, it's irritated the White House. The White House, basically used its press resources during a government shutdown to come out after him over the weekend.
Yeah. But they have no coherent message out of the White House. That's the problem.
They do not.
What is McConnell, I'm not sympathizing with Mitch McConnell, that's not my job, but what is he supposed to do? There's literally no messaging coming out of the White House that has coherency at all.
Exactly. Exactly. And McConnell's a shrewd guy, and he's very good at his job as Senate Majority Leader. But you're right. Not only is he getting mixed signals or broken frequency from the White House, he's also trying to figure out with his colleague in the House, Paul Ryan, where exactly they can go. So he's not going to back anything that he doesn't know have the president's support. Mitch McConnell does not like to lose. It's why he ultimately scrapped the vote on Graham Cassidy, the Obamacare repeal, back in October, I guess it was, because he knew it wasn't going to pass. But there's no clear messaging from the White House. Plus, he knows that this bill that McConnell and Flake, that Graham and Flake want, will never fly. In the House of Representatives, and I think it's like I said, it's this log jam, and I have struggled to figure out what the middle ground looks like, and apparently so have the 100 members of the Senate, because I've asked them and they don't know. I spoke to John Cornyn, who's the Senate Majority Whip, the second most powerful Republican senator.
Of Texas.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I said to him, Senator, are you willing to commit to a DACA vote, within the next 3 weeks, which is what Democrats have been clamoring for? And he said, absolutely not. And it's not that they don't want it, it's that they're just, trying to, cut their losses and realize that what they have now isn't compatible with anything they want in the House.
Yeah, and I will add that, because I can editorialize here, McConnell is, I think, a despicable individual in many ways, and gives, that's all he's about, is corporate donors, but he is not a dummy, and he knows when he has the votes, and he knows how to count. So let's wrap up, just because I could talk forever, but I don't want to on camera. We'll chat later. what do you think the path forward is? I know that you are as confused as a lot of people because you're hearing a lot of mixed messaging as well, and it seems like there's no compromise. Do you think the Democrats cave before the Republicans give in? That's what my greatest fear about this is.
Yeah, I mean, it's a question of who blinks first, and I hate to say it, I don't have a great answer. So they'll vote in an hour. From what I've heard this morning from sources on the Hill is that they still don't have the votes. The Democrats are not going to vote for it.
Sorry, let me just tell the viewers this is January 22nd, Monday, and this is before noon. So they will vote, and you may have an answer after you see this.
Yeah, exactly. But for what happens next, it's anyone's game. At this point, neither side is backing down. But I think in the end, the Republicans are going to have to allow some inches. They're going to have to step back a bit and say, okay, the country wants DACA, regardless of partisan affiliation. The Democrats are holding the ground and not budging. Let's see what we can give them. And it's probably not going to be a particularly liberal bill. It's probably going to be DACA plus some security measures, internal and on the border, plus something on chain migration. But I think the Democrats are going to get their DACA fix at the end of this. When the government opens back up, remains to be seen. And I'm not smart enough to make an educated guess on that. But it's going to be an interesting few days. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much. Check out Nash's work at P Nash Jenkins. I'll have a little Chiron with it on there.
Thank you.
Follow him.
No one follows me.
Lots of droll sarcasm on Twitter, which I appreciate wholeheartedly because I'm a little bit impulsive on Twitter. I just tweet whatever I think.
She does.
Including about football. No one cares.
I don't care.
All right. Have a great day, guys.